Hey, Lighthouse, isn't Daniel someone to admire? Do you remember how Daniel started his life? First of all, welcome to some morning devotions. And if you have questions, send them to questions at lighthousebaptist.net. And if you want information about Lighthouse, if you're not in familiar with this, but you're in the Monterey Peninsula here in lovely Central California, we'd love to have you learn about the church. Lighthousebaptist.net's a great place to do that. And we'd love to see you on a Sunday morning in purpose. If you're joining us on YouTube for streaming services, that's great. But man, we'd love to actually get to love on you and spend some time with you. So welcome. Come on. Back to Daniel. Do you remember how Daniel started in the story? Saying that he wouldn't take the king's food, that he wasn't going to do anything to rebel against the faith that he had in Yahweh. And then you see him like have the opportunity to gain like power and success, and over he tells Nebuchadnezzar, like, yeah, keep your gifts. Like, I don't want that. He the same with Belshazzar, and now he's on his third king and he's the same guy. And it's just it's cool that God blesses him. He has positions of authority and power, and yet he is still true to God through it all. He has times when he's apparently out of the favor of the court. He has times where he's the, when we find him today, he's one of the, very few political leaders in the top echelon of power. Same guy all the way through. That's integrity. Every situation he's in, he's the same dude. So when we pick up chapter 6 of Daniel, we see that Darius is now the king. Belshazzar's dead. Darius is the king. And the first few verses describe how he sets up his administration. 120, maybe we'd call them governors or satraps that are over different areas that are going to ultimately answer to 3 leaders, one of whom is going to be Daniel. So even going from the Babylonian Empire to the Persian Empire, there's some acknowledgement. Daniel's a good dude. He gets the job done, and he's the kind of guy you can trust. So this happens for a while, and apparently at some point he does such a good job. It says that there's a wisdom in him. There's a spirit in him that's just different than everyone else. And so instead of the other leaders looking and going, hey, we should be more like Daniel, they go, we got to get rid of Daniel. And isn't that a weird thing? Wouldn't we love it if it just worked where we have integrity? I always heard this taught, it's like, hey, you just be loving and have the kind of integrity that God wants you to have. People are going to be attracted to that, and people are going to come to you and say, what's different about you? And you're going to say, I follow Jesus, and then they're going to follow Jesus too. Man, that happens, but that's not the only thing that ever happens. That's not the only story that gets told. Sometimes people see our integrity and they don't like it. That's what happens to Daniel. And so picking it up in verse 5, these men said, we shall not find any ground for complaint against Daniel unless we find it in connection with the law of his God. That's just the kind of person you want to be. Say, no, it's not going to be, if you look at the way he keeps his books, or if you look at the way he treats his kids, or if you look at, the way she gossips online, or the way he, I don't know what it would be. But you say it's not going to be Daniel's social media accounts. It's not going to be the gossip at church. It's not going to be anything. It's going to be, if there's any flaw in him from a Mede Persian perspective, it's going to be in relationship to his God. And you know what? That would be true of us too. That we live in a place where we're free to worship. We might not always live in a place that we're free to worship. I'm so glad we do now. But people might find fault. And you kind of hear that, right? That like, oh, well, Christians believe this, and you go, oh yeah, we do. Yeah, that's that, but it's not because we think we're great or we know all the answers, but that's how we see God design the universe. And so this is the thing: if we're gonna find anything bad about Daniel, it's gonna be because he loves God so much. And man, may that be true of me and you too, that if people find any disagreement, how I always say it is that we want Christ to be the only stumbling stone. We don't want it to be our character. We don't want it to be our legalistic judgment. We want Christ to be the only character. We would love it to be the only thing that bugs me about those Christians is how much they worship Jesus, right? That's just the most important thing in their life. Okay, so then moving on, then these high officials and satraps came by agreement to the king and said to him, O King Darius, live forever. The high officials of the kingdom, the prefects and satraps and counselors, the governors are agreed that the king should establish an ordinance and enforce an injunction that whoever may petition to any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the injunction and sign the document so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, which cannot be revoked. Therefore, King Darius signed the document with an injunction. How should Daniel respond to this? So everybody is teamed up against him. And this is hard, whether it's, family, work environment, school, in a government position, whatever. When everybody teams up against you, that's the worst. So everybody's teamed up against him, and they've gone to the king and said, hey, king, for 30 days, we don't think anybody should worship anybody but you. You're not going to guess who likes that? The king, right? Like, yeah, it's a great idea. Why don't we just have 30 days of not worshiping to the pantheon, not worshiping? And it makes sense because he's got a huge territory that probably has lots of local deities, and he, might want to establish his authority and throughout the whole kingdom. So yeah, a little break from all the regional worship, and that'd be a great opportunity to focus everybody on me, on the king. So Daniel hears this, and I want you to think how you would respond. Would you respond with, man, maybe what Daniel should do is go get Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and walk down Main Street and protest. Or maybe he should take some legal action. He's in authority as well. Maybe he should argue with the king. Maybe he should start a revolution. Maybe now's the time for the Jews to rise up and overthrow the government, or whatever it is. But Daniel's still a man of integrity, just like you and I should be. And this is his response. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open towards Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God as he had done previously. You know what Daniel does is the exact same thing Daniel always does. He prays, he gives thanks, and he lets the chips fall wherever they fall. And over and over, you would say Daniel is in a hostile environment and unafraid. Daniel looks at the order of the king, and instead of going, what? Now they're taking this away from me? No, rather he says, okay, I see the rule. I'm going to go pray about it. I'm going to go worship Yahweh. And he's not throwing it in anybody's face. He doesn't walk into the king's court and pray to Yahweh there to cause problems. Rather, this man of incredible integrity does what he always does. If you and I would be more like that, the world would be a great place, a better place. Would there be a little more suffering for Christians? Are Christians afraid to suffer? We shouldn't be. But if we would be the kind of people that whatever happens in the culture, whatever laws there are that are unjust, whatever it might be, and we work for just laws. Of course we do. We work to defend those who can't defend themselves. We want for every human to be acknowledged as the image of God on them. We want justice. Of course we do. And we use the tools that are available to us. We vote, and we can have a peaceful protest, and all those things are fine. They're great even. But man, to neglect what Daniel emphasizes, to neglect that if there is going to be justice, it's not going to come from anywhere but God. Daniel is this man of integrity who hears that it's illegal to pray, so he just goes and sits by his window and prays. Do you see the simplicity? Do you see the integrity? Do you see the lack of anger? Do you see the lack of fear? Man, let's do that. All right, Lighthouse, be loved.